California Coalition Group says the new tax could add $324,000 to each new home or apartment built in the immediate future. $324,000 in addition to the already exorbitant cost to construct a home in California. What is this nonsense? Let's get into it. Here we go.
Miles traveled fee. Home builders could be charged for large projects in areas without public transit. That money could fund affordable housing. Glover sees it as a tax, which could have a chilling effect on construction.
The tax that could cost upwards of $16,000 a year for over 20 years for a total of about $324,000 per unit in the Bay Area.
Those opposed to the VMT fee argue that cities and counties already mitigate against vehicle miles traveled, and that it is offsetting the drop in gas tax revenues due to electric cars.
This bill did not go through the regular due diligence process because it was part of what they call a budget trailer. So it's basically they didn't have a chance to review that.
Housing advocate Robert Apodaca says this isn't just about new homes. It could lead to increased rents as well. They're working to get the VMT section repealed. While some may argue developers are looking to get a break, Glover doesn't see it that way. Everybody has to pay their fair share. How would you sort of respond to that?
We absolutely agree that we would pay our fair share, and this goes well above and beyond that and creates a fee that makes housing unattainable, unaffordable, and just out of the reach of many and most Bay Area residents.
In the East Bay, Ansar Hassan, ABC 7 News.
So at the beginning of that video, you heard the commentator say that they could construct affordable housing with this taxation, for lack of a better word. And so much of what has happened in California that has made housing unaffordable has been this layer after layer after layer of regulations, taxations, stuff that doesn't need to be. And that is the difference between California and a Florida, between California and a Texas, between California and an Oklahoma. Those other states don't have all of this nonsense, including this new tax that could layer on $325,000 over the next 20 years. I mean, who wants to pay that? That's absolute insanity. So all of the things that California has put on their constituents, put on their population, that all of the, and when I say things, all of the layers of bureaucracy and nonsense and permitting and all the stuff it takes to build housing, to build anything in California, let alone gas prices, energy prices, and that stuff, which cost everything else, which increase everything else cost-wise as well. But strictly on housing, California has created a situation where people can't afford housing in general. And that's why you're needing to build affordable housing, because this whole housing first thing, which is a complete nonsensical reality. Oh, if we just build more housing and get all the homeless people off the streets, yeah, that's never going to work. And it hasn't worked and it won't work moving forward. So let's just tax the F out of anybody related to housing and I'll just see how it goes. So this is one of those layers of nonsense that has created a situation where California is super expensive and everything in their pipeline is super expensive. This is how you get there. This is one of those little bits and pieces. And this isn't little. This is massive, massive. And you've got so many people struggling in California that is why you've got as many homeless as you do, because California has made their own state unaffordable. Because you've got all this virtue ideology of, we're going to make it, so much cleaner for the environment. That's not. It's just simply not. That's just nonsense. It's just a bunch of virtue signaling about, clean environmental, whatever. It's literally nonsense. And this is how you get there to that nonsensical point where nobody can afford anything. And then all of a sudden, you got as many homeless people as you do in California. Between California, Oregon, and Washington, you've got about 35% of the homeless folks in the United States. Just California alone, you've got somewhere between 25 and 30% of the homeless population in the entire United States. So Let's just throw on one more layer of taxation and we'll see how it goes. Shenanigans for days. Shenanigans for days. New California tax could add up to $324. Coalition made up of Chambers of Commerce, Taxpayers Association, small business and industry groups. Those are the ones that incur the extra costs. Meanwhile, you've got a bunch of socialist progressives who are like, let's just tax everything. What could go wrong? Well, it's been going wrong. The population leaving California is an indication alone that this isn't going on. That whole gerrymandering thing, that, redistricting things in California as a response to Texas doing their thing. It's wild how this goes. But when you start to look at these as individual events, it's not that crazy. The existence of the tax can be attributed to the state aiming to reduce car trips by 50% by 2035. Why? That is nuts. Why? Why are you doing that? That is absolute insanity. So the policies that you're inflicting upon your own constituents are what's creating all this. And it's unnecessary. By taxing new developments based on their potential vehicle miles traveled. What? What a grab. What a financial grab. The state thinks that they need money to build housing for low-income families that oftentimes have had a financial issue or just don't make enough. They would make enough if you didn't have such high costs of living in California, if you didn't have such high costs of energy, gasoline, housing. If you didn't have that, you wouldn't need this because these people wouldn't be low-income families. They'd just be out and somewhere around the median housing price and somewhere around median income. Instead, those two are wildly, wildly out of sync. And subsidized housing for the homeless, because the homeless are, folks that have basically fallen off the chart, right? So when they're going to tax new development with this VMT fee, vehicle motor tax, so a new development has to mitigate their vehicle miles traveled that house will bring to the environment. I'm sorry. What is wrong with you people? This is that constriction of the supply. This is one of those things where why would a developer want to move forward under this game plan? Why would they want to build housing knowing that this is going to happen moving forward? They wouldn't. Vehicle miles travel tax will disproportionately affect low-income households and people of color because now they got to pay this on top of everything else, and they can't get into this anyway. Housing in general. Fundamentally, if we do not build the housing that we need, that is a shame on us, Filer added. I would digress there, and I would say you need to get rid of this layer after layer of nonsense. You need to repeal that, but you can't because you're a Democrat-run state and you need the funding for all of your stupid social programs and just nonsense that is virtue signaling to the nth degree because that's all you're doing. So if we don't build the housing, you're not gonna. If there's no home to buy or the home that you just built now costs $324,000 more than the home that the white person bought last year, you're affecting people of color. Well, let's not focus on people of color. Let's be honest and say this is everybody, because everybody needs housing. Everybody needs housing. And whether you're white, whether you're black, whether you're Hispanic, this is going to impact you because this is one of those things where politicians think, it's the greatest thing ever. What could go wrong? Literally just pull out that revolver and shoot yourself in the foot. Just, right? Because that's what you're doing. And yet, these knuckleheads don't seem to understand, how might this impact the overall picture here? And they come up with some absolute nonsense. Well, we want to get rid of gasoline cars by 2035. I mean, just some real nonsense. It's going to take a long time. One of the other major stories going on right now in California is, the gas refineries. you've got a couple more refineries who are looking to shut down and close down their refineries and constrict the supply of oil and gas that's refined in California by 17.5%. Everybody rounds it up to 20. And now you've got Chevron saying, we don't know if we want to be here long term, because unless California turns around and makes a massive turnaround, which they will not, California won't. You got a bunch of virtue signaling progressives that just are head up ass. They simply are. I see people of color have huge, huge demand. They would love to buy a home, but is the price of the home is pricing them out? It's pricing everybody out. Housing is pricing everybody out. Just boop, across the board, everybody out. It's going to be only the wealthy. And in so many of these markets, it's because you've created, with policy, you've created a situation where this is the thing. This is the thing. Yeah, build it and they will come. Well, you've built the homeless industrial complex, and this is part of it. It's part of it. So you got people that are just absolutely stuck in the throes of addiction, in the throes of mental issues, combination. And in California, you've had a disproportionate number of people enter into homelessness because of your cost of living is so exorbitant. And everything costs more. When you increase, the cost of gasoline in California, that impacts states around it and the U.S. in general, because so much stuff is produced in California, the fourth largest economy in the world. It is. It's massive. The VMT tax, buried in sections 57 and 58 of AB 130, threatens to create unprecedented uncertainty for developers and could raise monthly rents by as much as $1,350. Now, those are probably estimates on the high side, just like the $324,000 is. In that example, I believe is for San Francisco, which has the highest cost of housing in California. This gave local governments and regional lead agencies the sole option to impose VMT taxes on builders, new homeowners, and renters. Yeah, that's awesome. That is just fantastic. Way to go, guys. No developer can take the risk of doing all the work and find out that there's going to be that kind of a fee. Hey, we're going to need you to pay your fair share, because we're going to need to take that money to build the low income and subsidized housing, because this kind of tax that we're levying on you is what made housing so unaffordable. And so many people are dropping out and just doing drugs and saying, F it, don't care. That's what we're doing. Or, they should be in a mental institution and they're not. And that's how you get a third of the United States homeless population in California, due to policies just like this, due to taxation just like this. The effect of these new taxes are massive, according to a Caltrans-funded study on VMT housing taxes, and will negatively affect many California residents. We have a housing policy crisis. Correct. You don't have a housing supply crisis. Well, you do, but underlying that is housing policy crisis. And the difference is in how much it costs to construct housing in general. In San Francisco, you're looking at spending $750,000 in just one unit of subsidized permanent housing. $750,000 for one unit of housing in San Francisco because of all this nonsense. You got land costs, you got all the other application fees. You got to go through all these commissions. You got to go through all this review process, all of this nonsense that was put in place to protect the consumer, because what good Democrat progressive doesn't want protection for the consumer, right? Who doesn't want that? Well, that has impact, and this is the impact that you're looking at. So we have a housing policy crisis, and when we continue to put policies in place and add to the already expensive housing, we're not getting the housing that we need. No, you're not. You're not. So I've been reading a bunch of books on homelessness, on economics of how we got there. And one is by Christopher Rufo, and he was at a convention that I was at in Seattle, in Renton, Washington here, put on by Steve Gordon Trucking. And one of the books is No Way Home, and it's about homelessness, and it's about how people become homeless and what can be done to make things better. And a lot of it has to do with eradicating policy that's created situations where people are so vulnerable. And that's not ever happening in these big blue Democrat-run cities. Could you imagine some counties and states? Can you imagine just starting over? Okay, we're starting fresh. All you guys are fired because you guys all have all these ridiculous jobs that are contributing to the massively expensive cost of housing in California. We're going to cut all of this and we're going to start over, and we're going to give everybody a shot at affordable housing. Could you imagine that happening? Hell to the no. Never happening. So states that have gone down this road, Washington State, where I am, is a prime example of that. We are California light. We are California 2.0, right? That's what Washington is. Oregon, not far behind, but Oregon doesn't have the population bases. And look at Portland, just an absolute dumpster fire because of policy, all kinds of policy. But Washington State, it gets propped up because of all the tech bros. And tech bros have the money, and they're able to afford it, and they're able to pay for all this ridiculous amount of housing, and they're getting little cracker box of homes. I know because we sell them. Summit Properties Northwest sells them. And that's what you're getting. $750,000 for a little cereal box, right? 1,200 square feet. American dream. And in California, that $750,000 cracker, cereal box is going to cost you another $324,000 over the next 20 years in taxation. All so that we have less cars on the road? Does that make any sense at all? Absolutely not. But in some virtue signaling mind who, people with a ton of money, it's great. Look at the environment. We're doing great things. Then you look at China and India and you're like, no, what you guys do in California has basically zero impact on the overall structure of the world crisis, the climate crisis. There's always some crisis, isn't there? Oh, it's a crisis. We need to fix this. So here's a layer. I want you to watch this. We're going to watch this. Because this is same thing. This is the policy, and I'm doing a full podcast on this as well, but we're not doing that today. We're just going to take a look at this because this fits in with what I'm talking about.
Today at 5:30, the state is working to finalize a proposal that could lead potentially to more oil production here in the state of California. It comes as the state is bracing for the closure of 2 major refineries within the next year. Thanks for joining us for Fox 40 News at 5:30. I'm Eric Harriman. Nikki has the day off. Fox 40 Capitol reporter Eitan Wallace has a much closer look at that proposal and shares why a major executive at Chevron says that the oil giant is seriously evaluating its future in the state should lawmakers fail to act on it.
It is a very difficult place to do business. And if we don't think we can get a return, we're going to put our money somewhere else. And I don't want to do that.
Chevron executive Andy Walls not mincing words about what it's been like for his company to operate in California as of late.
It's regulation, it's cost of doing business, it's the cost of labor, it's the cost of building, it's the permitting fees, permitting time. It is a lot of things that make it very difficult for a company like Chevron and for a lot of businesses to do business in California. It's very expensive.
That's it in a nutshell. You got all kinds of ridiculousness layered in there. And for an oil refinery, one of the biggest in the world. And they're like, we don't want to move. We don't want to exit the 4th largest economy in the world. But they're seeing pressure to do so. They've already moved their headquarters out. What would prevent them from saying, nope, you know what? Go F yourselves. We're not playing ball. We're taking our business and we're going elsewhere because you guys are just ridiculous to work with. And that's essentially what's happening. And this story here is Gruesome Newsom, podcaster Newsom's response to this whole unraveling of the refineries, of the constriction of the supply of gasoline by having these two refineries close, and possibly having Chevron leave as well. They've got two refineries, north and south in California. They leave, there's another 20%, I believe.
It comes as the owners of the Phillips 66 Southern California refinery in the South Bay and the Valero Northern California refinery in Benicia announced plans to close those refineries within the next year.
That means we lose another 20% of the gasoline that people in California need to get to work, to get to school, to do the things they do. And that means prices are going to go up and it's going to be less reliable. I think we're at that crisis mode.
Walls, who serves as Chevron's president of downstream, midstream, and chemicals, notes while Chevron moved its headquarters out of California last year, it still operates two major refineries here, one in El Segundo in Southern California and the other in Richmond in Northern California, where a combined 2,500 employees work.
Chevron has been here 145 years. We'd like to stay. We haven't made any decisions to stay or go yet. But we need real, sustainable, durable changes to the way the state works.
But soon,
we need real, sustainable, durable changes to the way that the state works. You're not going to get those. This is a state run by a bunch of Looney Tune progressive Democrats. And you got a handful of moderates, and you got a speckled in, just a tiny little on top Republicans. You know what I mean? It's wild that are in control of the big city populations. I should add that. There's a lot of Republicans in California. It's just that they're away from the coast and they're in areas where there just isn't enough population base to really make a difference. And so just like Washington State, east of the mountains, you got to look. Everybody's Trump. You betcha, Trump. Go Trump. We got, rodeos going on. We're go Trump. And meanwhile, in Seattle, you got a bunch of blue hair, obese people, protesting against God knows what all the time. So this idea that California is going to turn things around, ain't happening anytime soon, because this is the virtue signal that Gavin Newsom is doing, and he is having to basically pivot right now because he's going to run for president. And if the if gasoline prices spike in California in the next couple of years, it's just one more thing, because it's a direct reflection of Gavin Newsom's policies, which have constricted California's ability to produce its own special blend of herbs and spices, gasoline, that's so clean and good for the environment. Let's keep going.
Changes could be on the way. The governor's office sent us this draft language of a proposed deal that could allow for new long-term oil drilling in the state. Newsom's office makes clear the governor is still dedicated to a pathway that would transition California away from fossil fuels in the long term. But within the next 7 days before the legislative session concludes for the year, efforts are underway to finalize an oil deal. As it stands today, Newsom's proposal, among other things, calls for what's known as the 2-for-1 plug-to-drill oil well permitting approach. In a nutshell, the approach says for every 2 idle or orphaned oil wells shut down toward the end of their lifespans, 1 new oil well will be authorized for use in targeted areas that follow appropriate mitigations and environmental protections. The governor's office says,
Is that going to move the needle? Is that proposal going to really move the needle? Is that what the executive for Chevron is talking about? Oh, no. But it's some kind of thing to throw out there. Hey, let's see if they bite on this. Maybe they'll bite on this. Who knows? Maybe they'll bite on this. I think the oil industry says, no, don't think so, guys. Go take your little proposal there and bye-bye. Because this doesn't make sense. Because that kind of thing, that is to me, that is a lateral move at best. All right, we've got these pumps that aren't doing anything, or they're on their way out, or we're not going to do whatever with them. So now we're going to drill for other, new pumps. Does that make it a ton of difference? I don't think so, because it's all of this other regulation and having to require them to keep reserves of oil so that there isn't this spike in pricing when one of the refineries goes down for maintenance or whatever, trying to protect the consumer. Well, and in doing so, oil companies are leaving and saying, your shenanigans are causing us to say, go F yourselves. We're taking our business elsewhere because we can't make a go of it in California. So this little Mickey Mouse proposal here, this isn't a long-term solution. It's exactly what you would expect from a guy who's run his state into the ground, the fourth largest economy in the world, into the ground, and is going to be running for president and needs to have a exit strategy for the optics, which is, I did that and all companies wouldn't play ball. And, it's big corporate that's screwing you, consumer. When in fact, it's state policies that are, screwing you, consumer.
This will include oil-rich Kern County and other parts of the Central Valley. It comes after the governor sent the head of the California Energy Commission this letter in April calling on the state to work with refiners to ensure a pathway forward for affordable and reliable fuel supplies.
Oil and gas.
Before we get into gruesome Newsom there, what I was going to say is Gavin Newsom directed the California Energy Commission, who he sent that letter to that we just saw, to basically try and find a buyer for the two refineries that are going to get shut down. Hey, could you find a buyer for us at the same time? I mean, I know our policy absolutely is the reason that these refineries are shutting down, but now can you go out and pitch it to some investors, to some other refineries that might want to pick up a spare one or two in California and move on with their lives? Because, because oil and gas has such a clear future in California. Yeah, they don't, because of ridiculous policy, like just absolute nonsense.
Newsom's team directing us to these remarks the governor made in July as he spoke about his proposed oil deal.
Find some agreement to address the legitimate concern about how, we're in the how business, we move to a low-carbon green growth future, change the way we produce and consume energy. At the same time, we have enough available fuel supplies, stable fuel supply, and address the anxieties around cost.
And remember, this is just a proposal at this point. The time is ticking, though. If it's to advance this year, a final deal must be struck before the end of the 2025 legislative session next Friday. At the state capitol, covering local news that matters, Eitan Wallace, Fox 40.
Some wild stuff. Absolutely wild stuff going on. Hey, we'll give you a 2-for-1 special on Friday. 2 for 1. 2 for 1. Sheer insanity. And that pivot that Newsom is doing. Oh, that is so standard. So standard. So standard. I mean, we're concerned. We're trying to make this transition and we're concerned. Whatever. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'd love to have you subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.